Hello and welcome to episode 287 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
I'm James Whittingham.
This week, a YouTuber has managed to power his whole house using the batteries from disposable vapes. This idea has the potential to do the impossible. Make vaping seem cool.
I've discovered that Germany, the fatherland of the solar revolution, has terrible solar power potential. But its average is our worst month where Brian and I live. Dunkelflaut? How about Dunkelscandal?
It turns out that coal mines have a future after all. Not by mining coal, that's a terrible idea, but by harnessing the heat inherently contained within them. This makes me want to open a new coal mine just so I can shut it down.
All that and truly a lot more on this edition of the Clean Energy Show.
Jam-packed.
Jam-packed.
Jam-packed this week.
And not just jam, other things too.
Yeah. Quick sports update, just because we've been talking a little bit about sports lately. Did you catch any of the Canadian Premier League soccer final that just happened?
I saw the viral videos going around the world. The bicycle kick in the snow.
To claim in the air. Bicycle! Oh,
pretty amazing. One of the most amazing goals ever scored in soccer, I think.
Yes, because it was a blizzard.
Bicycle kicks happen all the time, and they hit the crossbar at the corner of the goal and go right in. But this was in a blizzard, and it was atrocious. I think they used an orange ball for the game, too. I don't think that's normal.
Okay.
Because soccer balls are usually white, are they not? Predominantly white?
I guess. I don't know. I don't follow soccer that much. But yeah, the game was in Ottawa, and I guess by this time of year, they don't normally have a ton of snow in Ottawa. But this year, blizzard, and it wasn't just a little bit of snow. It looked like several inches of snow on the field as they played.
Yeah, and they couldn't. The goal line wasn't even evident sometimes. Right. I don't know how they managed, but yeah, that's Canadian soccer for you. That was the Premier League, which is a new league in Canada, not in anywhere near the same level as the English Premier League, but it's important. It's important.
Yeah. And of course, our beloved Saskatchewan Roughriders are going to the Grey Cup. This is the finals of Canadian football, and it's the 112th Grey Cup. And, there's only 8 teams in the league. So, getting to the Grey Cup is maybe not the biggest deal as it is compared to in other sports. But it's always exciting around here. This is the home of Canadian football where we live. And they haven't been in it in about a dozen years or so.
That's all people care about around here. You go to a restaurant and did you see the game? No, I don't care about that anymore. I've dropped off that. And everybody talks about it like it's, at your summer party, which the Stockton summer party, the bartender was telling me, "Oh, have you seen the game we lost tonight?" And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I don't. She was down because the Riders lost, the team lost." And if you're listening outside of North America, we're confusing. We're calling one thing soccer, one thing football. It's actually the reverse. Yeah. Just reverse that if you're outside of North America. And a lot of you are, so I apologize.
Yeah, and I follow it, semi-casually. I do watch the games, but I tend to know there's a game because people around the city wear their colors on game day. So I'll see somebody in a green Riders jersey and I'll be like, oh, there must be a game today.
And if you're going for a bike ride, it's a great time to go during the game. I used to take my kids out during the Rider games for bike rides on busy streets because this place shuts down. It's the only place in Canada that cares. Really, no one else in Canada cares, but because we're a small province and have nothing else going on, it's like part of our culture and part of our politics too, which is kind of gross. Brian, it's reading week here in the university, so they get a week off, and it's Remembrance Day when we're recording this. It's a statutory holiday in the province where Brian and I live in Canada, and it's called different things around the world, and depending on where you are, but it's remembering World War II and World War I and other war tragedies that we've been involved with. And my son is home for the week, and I brought up hydro storage because I was preparing for the show over breakfast, and we got into an argument because he's in a class that is actually talking about hydropower, and he says it's terrible. So we've had a listener in the Bay Area of California writing into us numerous times talking about how bad hydropower is. Well, I'll tell you this, my son gets it. He went on about all the different things. And he said hydro storage is a terrible idea because it would make matters worse for the fish. The sediment, the turbidity, I think he called it, kicks up, and it just, I don't know.
Yeah.
But we need hydro storage for now. It's one of those things where you turn off the dams when there's lots of solar and wind, and you turn it back on to make up for it when it's cloudy or, not windy, which is called the Dunkelflaut, especially in the lowest time of the year, which is now in the Northern Hemisphere, getting towards now.
Yeah, and it's been traditionally a low-cost source of power, especially if you're running dams that are, built decades ago. But, I think eventually solar, wind, and batteries will be cheaper than solar or hydro.
Yeah, and there are some stories that we'll have on the show that will demonstrate that this week, which is quite remarkable. This is from one of our local EV associations that has a Facebook page. A guy was charging at the Tesla supercharger in Saskatchewan, which is up north, 2.5 hours. It's in a parking lot. I was there recently charging my car next door to the non-Tesla charger, and somehow there was a group of trees in this vast Walmarty parking lot, and behind it was a Bubba in a pickup truck with it was jacked up and had bigger wheels than extended out the side. He said, while I was charging, a truck parked behind the trees to the east of the chargers and started shooting paintballs at me. So this is what it's like to be an EV charger, an EV owner sometimes in the backwoods province where we live. And that's kind of why we bring this show to you. We get really cold here, goes down to -40. So we can talk about our EV ownership in that temperature. We can talk about the challenges of decarbonizing a very cold place. But still, this is what happens. People are against EVs. I mean, I don't think it's an Elon Musk thing. I think it's
it's enough to make you want to get a Cybertruck just for the protection.
Yes, it's supposed to protect you from bullets. It could certainly protect you from paintballs.
But that's already the most dangerous supercharger, because I've mentioned this before, because it's just in the worst parking lot of all time. It's in a big box mall parking lot, and you're taking your life in your hands every time you start charging, and then you want to walk to a couple of stores.
It's terrible.
It's the worst.
I remember that vividly. It's constant traffic.
Yep.
It's like, it's so much bigger of a city than we are somehow now.
Yeah.
We used to be the same. And now it's just constant traffic. The parking lot is poorly designed. It's not a grid system. It's curving around, and there's no place for pedestrians. It's not made for pedestrians, even though it's a mall. Yeah.
No, they never planned any sidewalks or anything. There's no obvious route to take when you're walking somewhere. Like, I was just in Brandon. There's a supercharger in Brandon. And that one, at least, like, there's a sidewalk that runs through the big box parking lot. So you park your car, and it's still slightly dangerous because you got to cross but you can walk down to the Starbucks mostly on a sidewalk.
In the evening, when it's not busy, it's better. But it is, you will really have to choose, do I die or do I go to A&W and get a burger for lunch? And I always choose the burger.
All right, so this was a fun story that came up in my YouTube feed this week. This video has gone viral, so it should be fairly easy to find if you want to look for it.
It came up in my feed too, and I'm surprised it came up in your feed. I guess we're not that different, Brian Stockton. I guess we're not that different.
Yeah, so the guy's name is Chris Dowell, and he's got a YouTube channel. This is up to a few million views now, but he made a home battery out of disposable vapes, the batteries that
Brian, what is a home battery? Let's talk about that.
It's a battery that you can put in your house to help, sort of store
the whole
and
house.
dispense.
It's not a D cell. It powers the whole stinking house.
That's right.
And these disposable vapes have these tiny batteries in them. So it was quite fascinating. He went to vape shops. I had this conversation with my family at dinner a couple nights ago. Yeah. They said, where did he get them? I said, he went to a vape shop where they recycle them and collected them. And then he got frustrated because he had to break them all open, and there was 2 sizes of batteries. And I guess the smaller batteries didn't work so well. So he chose the larger ones instead. And he also found that a lot of them were too dead. They had been sitting there for a year.
Yeah.
So he had to sort of measure the voltage as he did this ridiculous process, which took him a long time.
Yeah. He had to have a whole system in place. So, it took a ridiculous amount of time, but nevertheless possible. And it's not as large as a typical home battery, but 2.5 kilowatts is what he came up with. But anyway, I have a clip, so let's roll the clip.
This whole vape collection thing has got completely out of hand. Let's see if we can power a house of these things.
A quick warning before we start, do not attempt to replicate anything I do in this video. It covers some pretty dangerous stuff. So these ridiculous disposable vapes have actually got fully rechargeable lithium-ion batteries inside of them. And these are the exact same batteries that we use in our phones and in our laptops. But these vapes have been designed to be thrown away after just a single use, which is just completely insane to me. Well, I want to build a massive battery that's got a capacity of around 2,500 watt hours. And this should easily be able to power my workshop for multiple days, or even power my entire house for about 8 hours. Oh, look at that. All of this powered 100% by disposable vape batteries that would otherwise be in the landfill most likely.
Yeah, so he had to obviously put all these little batteries together, wire them together.
Yep.
And he used 3D printing to sort of make little containers for them.
Yep.
And he talked about the safety issue and how they sort of had self fuses that if they got hot and burnt, it would disconnect. And
Yeah.
obviously an electrical engineer, I hope, or something like that, maybe an electrician.
Yeah, it took so much work and it is dangerous. So it's a thing that's not exactly practical, but just certainly fun from a demonstration viewpoint. He also needed a battery management system, which he got out of a wrecked Tesla, which was something he had bought previously for another project. He had a Tesla battery and the power management system.
You need sort of software, a thing to sort of manage how much it charges and sort of balance the voltage in that.
Yeah.
And yeah, Tesla or a car, EV would be made up of lots of different batteries too, not tiny little disposable vape batteries, but lots of different little cells usually.
But they are similar to, the ones that you would sometimes find in a car, like little cylindrical batteries that are sort of like the size of a AA battery. And yeah, he just tied them all together, got about 50 volts out of it, and then used a transformer to sort of pump that up to 240 volts, however that works. Mm-hmm. But absolutely worked seamlessly like any home battery would. It was quite remarkable.
Well, your son's an electrician. You should have a hotline, a red phone that you could just pick up in the podcast studio and ask questions.
Yes.
To see how things work. But yeah, it worked. He's not going to use, I don't think he's going to use it on the long term because it seems dangerous. But yeah, he'll probably use it for a while. And, it's it goes to show, I think because it is viral, that a lot of people are, isn't it amazing what, like most people would say you couldn't power a house with batteries. Yeah. You can't power a grid with batteries. You can't store solar power and dispense it into the California grid for hours every night. But that's what's going on and be the largest source of electricity in California. But that's what's going on. If you can demonstrate it on a micro scale like this, like a disposable vape battery, and put them all together, and it just goes to show you put a lot of little things together, and you can create great things, even if it is a container full of batteries, a shipping container, and then you put a whole bunch of those together and you're powering an entire city. That's amazing. And I think that gets the point across to people.
Yeah, it's really good at making the point as well that why do these exist? And in fact, they have now been banned in the UK. So disposable vapes are now illegal in the UK as of just this year, as of June. But they're legal in Canada. They're legal in many places in the world, and they're making these things in the millions. But the main question I had, if they're disposable, why wouldn't they just use regular alkaline batteries, which are already disposable?
I don't know if he touched on it. He may have, but it might have something to do with the fact that you need to discharge it all the way and still get power out of it or something like that. Right. It needs to have a heavy draw on it for a short period of time. Something like that. Or maybe because there's so many lithium-ion batteries being made for cars and grids, maybe it's cheaper for lithium-ion now than alkaline.
Yeah, like maybe these could even be the factory seconds or something, the batteries that wouldn't make it in other applications, something like that. Who knows?
But I think he pointed out that a USB-C charge port was like 0.3 cents or something ridiculous, or 3 cents.
Yeah, all they have to do is add a charging port to these things, and then they're legal. And that makes way more sense anyway, because then you don't have to just throw it away.
Someone is playing a trumpet outside the TAPS Remembrance Day thing, because I don't live anywhere near a Remembrance Day ceremony.
Yes, well, it's 11/11, which is when you're supposed to do that.
That's pretty remarkable. I think it might be my neighbor.
I could hear it in my headphones.
It picked up. what's remarkable is that they're doing a good job, because I think it might be my neighbor in high school, a high school girl next door who I've heard practicing the trumpet before, or someone in the neighborhood has been practicing trumpet. Okay, so that threw me. My window's open. It's a little above freezing here, but I get hot in my studio and my bedroom here. All right, Brian, I was minding my own business the other day. I was on the X, and I saw something from a guy in our province here, a local guy who posts automated things about our electricity mix here. But I dug into it a bit deeper, and he's a pro-SMR, pro-nuclear guy. And he's tried, it's still going on. The trumpet, it still continues. Come on. It's over. You had a great finish. Anyway, a pro-nuclear guy is doing this, and he's trying to demonstrate how nuclear is the only way. So it's a bit biased. But in that post, I learned about capacity factors, okay? We got to talk about capacity factors, so we have to explain it again because it's important. This is a Clean Energy Show knowledge break, I guess. A capacity factor. Let's say you have a nuclear reactor, and that nuclear reactor puts out 1 gigawatt. You don't need to know how much that is. I don't know. What does that do with it? It's an amount of homes that is more than my neighborhood. It's a lot of homes. And it doesn't run all the time. It can put out, a certain amount of electricity, but sometimes it's down. So you have to figure out what percentage. And most nuclear reactors are around 90 to 93% capacity factor. So 93%.
Yeah.
If I have a 100-watt solar panel from the hardware store, which I do have, it can theoretically produce the most electricity of 100 watts middle of the day.
Yep.
So if you put it up in the solar grid, it only produces between 10 and 30% of what that 100 watts would be if it was at 100 watts around the clock.
Yeah.
Because the sun goes down, as you know. Clouds come. But that's what the capacity factor is. We've got good capacity factors where you and I live for wind and solar. And I didn't realize how bad Germany was. Germany's capacity factor for solar is 10%, which is at the really low end of what a capacity factor for solar could be. So you might say that's one of the worst places because it's cloudy all the time. Lots of clouds. It's not the greatest place to put solar. But Germany is the fatherland of our current solar revolution that we are experiencing.
Yeah.
Because 25 years ago, they went big on solar. You see, in the 80s, there was the Chernobyl nuclear disaster in Russia, or what is now Ukraine? Is it now Ukraine? I think it is.
I forget.
People got scared in Germany from that radiation because that radiation was going to fall on them, and they all went home from school and ducked and covered and were terrified of it. And it affected Germany, and they said, we want to get rid of our nuclear reactors, and that over the next decades. And they did. They decided to wind down their nuclear program, and they went big on solar. So they started manufacturing solar panels in Germany and putting them up, having a great program to put them up. And they did that. And then China said, hey, you've figured out how to make great solar panels, and it works. You've proven that it works. So they went and started manufacturing them in their own cutthroat way that they do in China, and got the supply chains all in order and the automation down, and they made them a lot cheaper, and then they ended up dumping them onto the world market, which killed the German solar manufacturing. But the point is, without Germany, we'd be nowhere. And what I learned, Brian, is that our province, which is not decarbonizing, Saskatchewan, our worst solar capacity is in December, as you would guess, because that's the shortest days. And it's also, if you look at your own solar output, we have a lot more clouds in December than we do in, say, July. And that's our worst. And that's Germany's average. Germany's average is our worst. And yet we're told over and over here that we can't do solar here. So what's going on? Because solar makes up, a significant chunk of the German grid now and growing, but it's not as great as it could be, but it's still there. They're still doing it, and they have more right now than we will in 2050. If we go 2050, as I've said before, when solar panels are cheaper than cornflakes, in 2050, our grid will only have 8% solar because of, I don't know how to put it, really backwards thinking people that really just don't understand economics or want to embrace any of this. We have cheaper electricity here. We have cheap coal, cheap natural gas, but still, it doesn't make any sense. Saskatchewan, of course, gets cold compared to a lot of places in Germany. We can get down into the minus 30 Celsius, which is very cold. Variable seasonality here, as in Germany. It's not that different. Long summer days, short winter days, and more clouds in November and December here. Yeah, he seems to be an engineer of some sort who is concerned about greenhouse gas emissions, which is great, but his take is that SMRs are the way to go. And he posted today about carbon emissions, saying that carbon emissions are better from SMRs. I don't know if I can believe him, because people tend to get biased when they start, cherry picking data, and they're assuming that nothing gets recycled. He writes, if we skip SMRs, we become entrenched in our natural gas dependency for an additional 2 decades before those gas assets are up for replacement. So he posts details about our power generation every week, and he's probably listening to the show. So shout out to you. You can write in to us and explain your details in more detail and from your own perspective, because I don't know exactly where you're coming from. It's not clear from your website. So he seems to want to prove the limitations of renewable power in our cold northern land and go to nuclear. I'm not against nuclear, but then I always say that I'm against, the boondoggle that it could create price-wise and taxpayer-wise, and is it not necessary? Is it not necessary? A lot of people think it's not necessary, including Mark Jacobson, who I reached out to at Stanford University a couple of months ago. This week, something caught my eye, and his solar capacity factor, as I said, is the rate of the actual energy a solar plant produces over a period, usually a year, to the amount of its energy it could have produced if it ran at maximum capacity 24/7. In other words, if the Earth stopped spinning at noon and it stayed there, that would be its maximum capacity. So a 100-watt panel would put out 100 watt-hours in an hour. I don't know if you want to get into the weeds of this, but we measure electricity in watt-hours or kilowatt-hours or megawatt-hours or gigawatt-hours, the amount of electricity for a period of time. And there's almost 9,000 hours in a year. So if you add up, that would be like 800,000 watt-hours if it was sunny at noon all the time. So capacity factor is a percentage of that, what it actually is. And that's important, because when you invest millions of dollars into a solar project, you want to know how much electricity you're going to get out of it. You look at the capacity factor and you can figure that out and say, okay, 10% of a gigawatt is 10% of a gigawatt that we'll get for, X number of hours of the year. So in December, the days are shortest and also happen to be the cloudiest, and our solar capacity factor is 10%. But our solar capacity factor last year as a whole, this is with wildfire smoke and all, he says was 22.5%, which is not bad.
Yeah.
Brian, it's not bad. It's in the middle of good. It's not California. It's not Arizona, but it's good and worthwhile. And you can see that the capacity factor is different in different times, and it gets down to like 10.5% in January, only 8% in December, 9.5% this month in November. So, but that's actually pretty good. There's a lot of places in the world, like Germany, because I don't know I cannot find what their solar capacity factor is in their Dunkelflaut, which is the darkest time of the year, less windiest time of the year. No information exists. Usually AI can find that information these days, which is kind of cool, but it doesn't exist. All I know is that their averages. So their December average must be nothing. It must be just pitiful.
Yeah.
I don't know it could be February, it could be their darkest year, depending on the weather, not just the hours of the day. But yeah, that's what it is. In the summer here, we're like 32 to 34%, which is a lot better. California is only 25%. California!
Yeah.
And ours is 22.5 last year. Like do you think California would say, well, solar doesn't work here, I guess we won't use it? Man, the world as a whole is 11 to 13%. And Germany, on average, 10 to 11%, which is our worst. This is the realization that I had. There was a scandal going on in our province, a scandal against renewables. And I'm here to fight against that, whatever's going on. It's wrong. Do I have to run for office? Do I have to take the podcast to run for office? What's it going to take? I have too many scandals in my life to run for office. I'd have to erase it. Yeah, the summer production is 2.5 times higher than the worst winter months. So yeah, but it's just crazy how that works. And you know what? Our wind capacity factor here is way above average too. So we could be, it's not quite South Dakota level,
Yeah.
where they're actually 120% of their grid. They're actually exporting because they have so much wind. But there is veins of high wind here that compare to South Dakota. And on average, we're not that far different than them. So in 2024, solar power accounted for 40% of Germany's total electricity generation. And again, in 2050, when we're supposed to have all this figured out and done and decarbonized, 8% is what our bold goal for Saskatchewan. And I'll tell you this, Brian, right now, and I've said this on the social media, you do nothing, we're going to be more than 8% because the solar panels will get so cheap. You don't even have to pay a feed-in tariff. You don't have to buy the electricity from the solar and feed it into the grid, which they do now because you produce too much, because we'll all have cheap batteries. Maybe we'll make them out of disposable vapes or disposable something. Sex toys. Who knows? We'll gather up batteries and the batteries are getting so cheap that people will just say, screw you, because I know that the electricity is going to get expensive here because they're way behind now. I keep having power outages here they're not fixing the grid. They're trying to keep electricity rates down. But at some point, that's going to fall off a cliff and the rates are going to go way up. They start buying SMRs that are 2 times the actual price that they claim they're going to be. It's going to be very expensive electricity. Like you always say, if you wait to decarbonize, it costs more. So decarbonize now, start using free fuel from the sun or the wind, and it makes a big difference. So yeah, 14% of Germany's total electricity generation, and we're only aiming for 8. So I think there'll be more, rooftops aren't great here because it snows here and they can cover the rooftops. But generally speaking, I mean, there is places in the world now where fences are cheaper to make from solar panels than from wood.
Yeah.
And I know from patching up my fence that wood is not cheap these days. And maybe it should be made out of a solar panel. And, in 2050, I think that everybody's fence is going to be made out of solar panels. And they're going to say, screw you, power utility. And that's going to drive up the price of electricity even more as we make our own power, and they can't do a damn thing about it. They can't say no. So the Premier's office, in conversation with our listener, John Hayes in Japan, who's a politician there, remember this was from a few weeks ago. Yeah, he said that, solar was too variable here. Well, it is in Germany too. And look what it is there. Plug and play kits now are a thing. You can go, like in some states now, you can go buy a plug and play kit, put it on your balcony and plug it into your outlet, and it'll just give you some of the power from that kit and reduce the electricity use. That's going to become more common. And why wouldn't you do that? I mean, in building materials, 2050 is so far away in solar years, Brian. It's ridiculous. Look how far we've come in the last 25 years.
It makes perfect sense when you framed it the way you did. They got very worried about Chernobyl. And then you start to think, well, wait a minute, like maybe we can do something else. And well, if the answer is getting free power from the sun, it seems hard to come up with an argument that was somehow a bad idea.
Yeah. But, Germany, I'm not saying it was a good idea to shut down the nuclear. If you have the nuclear, keep it going, even if it costs a little bit of money to upkeep it. It's still the best idea, especially in Germany.
Yeah, and they have done that there, I believe. All right, from The Guardian, power from flooded coal mines. So this is called mine water geothermal heat. And this can be set up in flooded coal mines, and the water is warmed by natural processes to supply low-carbon heat. They use heat exchangers and pumps to recover this heat and then distribute it via district heating networks to homes and buildings. This is a low-cost, long-term, stable energy, similar to, we've talked about harvesting heat from sewer systems. They have a project like that in Toronto where they're heating a hospital. And instead of just putting your geothermal loops in the ground, because you can do that pretty much anywhere. You just put ground loops into the ground and you get far enough down, there's always a constant temperature, and you can always harvest that heat with a heat pump, and you don't have to burn fossil fuels for it. So this is being done in the UK, And there's a report that estimates about a quarter of UK homes sit above flooded workings where this type of heat could work. So that was a surprising statistic to me.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's all coal mines, but there are certainly places to harvest heat, according to them, under a quarter of UK homes. I mean, I was thinking about the coal mines that we have around here may not work because they're not near any civilization.
Right. And transmission lines is a huge expense and difficulty to build if it's not existing already, which is why, closed coal plants get turned into solar plants sometimes because the transmission's already there.
Yeah. So this type of heat works best with district heating systems.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing this kind of thing. District heating is big in certain places in Europe. I'm thinking in Denmark, but they've already been trying it out in the UK. This is proven. They've found that it works. There's 30,000 square meters of warehouse space that are already being heated by this technology. So it's just one more option where you probably just get a little bit more heat than you would if you just stick these, geothermal loops right into the ground.
District heating is when you run like a hot water pipe from house to house and you share.
Yeah.
The whole district shares the same heat source. And they tried that in Okotoks, and it's in Alberta, Canada, and it's kind of failed now after 20 years because they can't find the parts for it. The proprietary valves and things are all gone, and it's just been a disaster recently. But it has been successful in Europe. And we could be doing more of that. And especially when you're talking about, high density housing, like office build or, residential towers of high skyscrapers of people, it makes sense, or office buildings because you have to heat them. And that's what they're doing in Toronto a little bit, and cooling. But geothermal is expensive. But in Edmonton, they're doing it for district heating as well. But people aren't really buying the lots there in the suburb that they've designated for that. I think they've got giant heat pumps, which are heating fluids, which then go into homes, and the heat pumps are powered by small-scale solar. Well, yeah, it's a tough thing to sell for people, especially in North America, but it's a good idea. If you'd like to contact us, please drop us an email at cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. Anything that's on your mind. And I've singled out a few people on the show here. Give us an email if you have any causes or concerns or grievances. cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. And of course, that's voicemail that you can always leave us is speakpipe.com/cleanenergyshow, or you can do what Glenn did last week, and that is record a voice memo and attach it to an email and send it to us that way.
All right, this next story is from Energy Storage News, and I wanted to talk about it because grid storage batteries, particularly in Australia, have been coming up a little bit lately on the show. They've been a huge part of stabilizing the grid in Australia. But then I saw this headline and it was a bit of a bummer. And I thought, well, I should maybe talk about this because, we tend to only talk about the good news stories when it comes to grid storage batteries. But I read through the whole story, and in the end, I thought it was still a good news story. But they've had a failure at their largest grid storage battery in Australia. This is the largest one in the world, actually, at 850 megawatts.
Well, wait till the end of the show, Brian, because we've got something bigger. But go on.
Okay. It always gets topped quickly. So this is in New South Wales, Australia, and they had a big failure of their transformers. But the good news is they have 3 transformers. So the battery is essentially, parceled down into 3 different parts. So 2 of the transformers failed. The first one is still working, so they're still putting out 350 megawatts. So I thought that was super impressive and really just points to, I think, another benefit of grid storage batteries, compared to other conventional sources of fuel where you would often just have to shut the whole thing down. No, they still have a third of it running. They've still got, 350 megawatts running out of 850, which doesn't seem too bad to me. And they will, of course, eventually replace these transformers and get it all working again.
Well, it's just a transformer. There's transformers all over the power grids, no matter where you get your power from, whether it's coal or solar or batteries. You need the transformers to transform it. So that doesn't seem like a bad news story to me.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the batteries, does it? I mean, you can't blame it on the batteries.
Yes. For whatever reason, these transformers failed. But you're right. Yeah, that's a totally common part. Anyway, some quick car news I wanted to wrap up here just because this we mentioned also on the show recently too. We just mentioned in passing Nissan and Toyota, Nissan being in financial trouble, we mentioned, and also that Toyota seemed to be making moves in terms of their solid state batteries. So while there was an update on both this week from Electrek, and Nissan has taken some drastic steps to turn their company around, James, they have sold their corporate headquarters and they're now leasing it back from the person they sold it to. Whatever company they sold it to.
I count that as a drastic step.
Yeah. I mean, it seems odd, but of course you're going to get a massive cash infusion from selling that building, and then you can still use it and keep leasing it. So they're doing that, and they're cutting other costs as much as they can. They're cutting or consolidating 6 of the 7 planned manufacturing plants. So they're trying to streamline things. It's going to be a balance, of course, because they still need to make cars and sell them. So they can't close all of their manufacturing. But nevertheless, it seemed like a positive step for Nissan to try and turn things around. And then the update from Toyota is that they have once again delayed their plans for solid state batteries, which they've been talking about forever, and they've delayed them forever as well. It seemed promising earlier this year because they bought a 280,000 square meter plot of land in Fukuoka, Japan, and they were going to build a plant there to make these solid state EV batteries. But it's now delayed. So to recap all of their delays on these solid state batteries, they were going to introduce them first in 2020, and then they pushed it to 2023, and then to 2026, and the new date is 2028.
Yeah, it's elusive, these solid-state batteries. The solid-state batteries don't have a liquid, polymer, a barrier or whatever, but it makes them supposedly more energy dense, supposedly safer, but, sodium does that too. Sodium-ion battery chemistries do that. Yeah, but a lot of people are working on it. A lot of people are just about there.
Yeah.
But there's so many things, whether it's price or manufacturing or temperature performance or something, there's always something that they can't solve.
Yeah, and it was probably never a good bet for them to bet on, but of course they didn't really want to make AVs, so betting on something that was going to be solved in the future seemed to make sense actually for the way Toyota had kind of planned things out. But I think as we just learned, they could use disposable vape batteries and make electric cars. They just don't want to.
And it'll just have a sort of a vape air coming out this tailpipe of vaping mist. The Clean Energy Show podcast is made possible by listeners like you who support our work on Patreon. So go to Patreon now, patreon.com/Clean Energy Show, and join our Patreon for as little as nothing. You could do it for nothing if you want and get our bonus podcast last week where I gave shocking medical news, weird medical news. Brian talked about pig butchering scams. It's not what you think, unless you know what it is, then you would think it right. But then I reviewed the White House Effect, a climate documentary on Netflix that talked about George H.W. Bush being pro-climate just before the election and how things went bad and became politicized and still are. And Brian talked about Hurricane Melissa in Jamaica tied to climate change. But if you join our Patreon now, you can get that for free. You don't need to, because we're celebrating 1 year of Patreon. Everyone with an account gets it for free. You don't have to support us financially. But if you do, get ad-free episodes like that one, exclusive access to our Discord server, discounts at our merch store, early access to episodes, behind-the-scenes material, private updates, and of course, thank you credits once a month on our podcast, depending on the level that you support us. But coming up next, of course, is the lightning round. Stay tuned. It's time for the lightning round.
The lightning round is a fast-paced look at the latest headlines in climate, clean energy and transportation.
With the annual COP conference underway in Brazil, new analysis shows that the UK newspapers devoted more than triple the column inches to advertising high-carbon products like cruises, SUVs, and flights than they did to covering last year's global climate negotiations. That is from DeSmog. Spain is on the cusp of a coal-free mainland power system, with coal generation falling 97% since the early 2000s, making up just 1% of the power mix this year. And of course, the payoff is cleaner air. Brian, we're always talking about autonomous vehicles and autonomous driving and autonomous taxis. Mm-hmm. Well, companies are working on autonomous e-bikes now. Why? For autonomous deliveries, of course, not because you want to watch bicycles drive around for no reason. So they're like a trike. They have a box on them and they have a little pole coming up with sensors. And yeah, they're 25% cheaper than an autonomous car. So in some places,
25 times, I think you said percent.
I apologize, 25 times cheaper than autonomous cars, 6 times the speed throughput increase over sidewalk robots. Talked about sidewalk robots too in LA. What were they called? Samos? And
I forget, but I saw a bunch of them when I was there.
Yeah, so this is a surprise. We often don't talk about that many new things on the show. This is one of those things that, I guess you could do that with bicycles. And I guess bicycles could deliver your fried chicken meal or whatever you're getting, or your prescriptions or whatever, just as well as a car could. And apparently it is 25 times cheaper and 6 times the speed. Sweden has new edible road salt for melting ice on roads, and it is being eaten by birds. I've got a picture there of birds eating the road salt happily. It's saving birds from deadly dehydration because birds will pick up salt and dehydrate. And they're made with beet extract and maize starch, cornstarch. So it melts ice safely while feeding wildlife instead of poisoning them during brutal winters. I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence of whether we should mass feed wildlife, if that's something we should do, but it's better than poisoning them. So this is beyond animal welfare. The eco-salt leaves fewer chemical residues. And it's time for a CES Fast Fact. 1 billion people in Africa still cook with basic fuels like wood, charcoal, and dung. And that contributes to 800,000 premature deaths a year, mostly women and children. We've said this before on the show. Solving this problem would cost less than just 0.1% of the global energy investment that we need to do to decarbonize the planet. Just a tiny fraction of that would save nearly 1 million people from premature deaths in Africa from the way they cook. And hopefully that could take off. Renewables and nuclear are 75% of the European Union's electricity mix right now. And renewables generated 41 to 57% during January-September 2025. Nuclear was around low 20s to 25%. Fossil fuels, though, have plunged 30 to 50% since 2016.
Wow.
Which, if you're a numbers person, is significant.
Yeah.
In 2025, coal is below 10% from April to September, and gas is below 16% from March to September. According to Row Motion, that is RHO Motion, global EV sales topped 2 million for the first time in a single month this September 2025.
Yeah, that's not long ago. We would have assumed you were going to say in a year.
And not long ago, we would have said 10 years because that's just how far we've come. I remember when I was waiting to get to 1 million vehicles on the roads in the world that were EVs so I could tell people, yeah, well, there's 1 million of them out there. Well, we made 2 million in 1 month now. So, yeah, a lot of people around here don't know stuff like that. Wood Mackenzie, that is the research firm, confirms new natural gas generation is actually quite shockingly expensive. We often think of natural gas as the quote-unquote transition fuel, and it is relatively clean and relatively cheap. Maybe not everywhere, though, because $126 per megawatt hour is what they're expecting in 2030. A new solar plus batteries, that is, solar farm plus the batteries to store it for a few hours, are less than half the cost of new gas, which is shocking.
Yeah.
Because batteries supposedly are expensive, solar cheap, and we're not surprised when solar got cheaper than gas, but solar with batteries are actually now half the cost of new gas, because gas is getting expensive due to the lack of turbines available, the shortage, and AI data centers buying them up. New nuclear is $139 per megawatt hour. It is also getting close to being cheaper than new gas. Nuclear, which is known to be very expensive, yeah, that's pretty shocking to me. Baidu Apollo Go, that is the Chinese company that is making robotaxis, has had weekly rides tip the 250,000 mark. So 250,000 people are taking autonomous robotaxi rides in China. They operate robotaxis in Wuhan, parts of Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, and the company is also expanding to Hong Kong, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and most recently, Switzerland. And that was about the same number of rides, Brian, as the Google sister company Waymo that we're always talking about is doing. So it's not just Waymo that's doing it. This is a software thing. So if the Chinese people, the companies there solve before us, that software can spread pretty easily. Or if Tesla solves it, they can do it too, supposedly. Tokyo confirms the hydrogen-powered Hilux pickup truck will launch in 2028. So Toyota is making a hydrogen-powered pickup truck, showing that they are super in touch with reality. Yeah. Heat pump sales top gas boiler sales in Germany for the first time. Another shout out to Germany, where I don't think we have a single listener that has written into the show, at least. Hello, Germany. I should check our stats to see how many people in Germany are listening, but Bloomberg has that story. Electric motorcycles are taking a 10% market share of new motorcycle sales in Kenya in the first 8 months of 2025, and hopefully that'll shoot up quick. There's a new November electric demand record in Texas because it got hot unexpectedly in Texas, 92 degrees on November 7th. But that's the time of the year where they turn off all their gas plants and coal plants and to do maintenance on them, thinking that they don't need it for the cooling demand for the air conditioning. Well, solar came to the rescue, providing almost solar and wind was like 50% of the power demand all day to cooling. And they also were looking at a possible battery record last time I checked. So without that, they might have been in trouble. Vancouver, the city in Western Canada here on the coast that I visited last summer, it has scrapped a planned $10,000 fee for gas stations to have EV chargers. Like if you built a gas station, did not have EV chargers, you had to pay a $10,000 fee. They scrapped that. The city cites supply chain challenges as a reason, which is odd because I thought there was to be lots of options for chargers around. And it was a rethink of the council's 2022 decision to install EV chargers at gas stations and parking lots. And compared to here, there certainly are a lot of gas stations with EV chargers.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite place, actually, to charge an EV because there's gas around. You have to smell gas. You have to listen to cars coming and going. But I'd rather be in a quiet parking lot with a paintball gun being shot at me sometimes. And finally this week, Germany. They are building a 1 gigawatt, 4 gigawatt battery electric storage system, energy storage system in Europe. So you're talking about 850. This one is a gigawatt.
Yeah.
And it will be the largest battery storage thing in Europe. So that is 1 gigawatt, which is like a coal plant, a nuclear reactor.
Yeah.
For
with
4 hours.
4 gigawatt hours of storage. So it can, dispense that gigawatt for as much as 4 hours if they need to.
So if you have solar throughout the day, you can extend that into the night until people go to bed, essentially. And Brian, that is now. That is right now. We are in the year 2025, and we are looking ahead to year 2050 of when we need to decarbonize the planet. What will it be then? It's not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same next month. We're going to talk about another record next month, probably. Certainly next year. And the year after that, it's going to dwarf this. And in 5 years, we're going to laugh at figures like this. What it will be in 2050, nobody can see what is coming, the trajectory of prices and technology improvements of what's coming. We think, no, we can't do this. We can't have solar and wind. We can't, because it's too variable. Well, no, it's not the way it's going to be. And you have to look towards the future. And I'm mad because our power grid here is going to screw us, and I'm going to have to pay a great deal of electricity prices in the future. Should I live?
And on that news, that is our show for this week. Please find us on social media, Clean Energy Pod, patreon.com/Clean Energy Pod, and cleanenergyshow@gmail.com if you want to send us an email. And as always, remember to hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you listen to this podcast.
That's right. Patreon.com/Clean Energy Pod. Go there now. Join us like our executive Clean Club members, Green Bastard and Brett Rodley. Thank you to all who are supporting our podcast. We do appreciate it. It keeps us going. We'll see you again in 7 days.
See you next week.